This happened on Tuesday, and apparently Telstra began announcing routes to services that did not belong to it. So there was services like, for example, Proton Mail. They were announcing one of their /24s. And also, for example, we see Quad 9 that indicated that some of their prefixes were being announced by Telstra. Now, Telstra did say that they didn't see a lot of traffic being routed to them as a result of that. So they said that their systems indicated that negligible traffic was actually received. I mean, negligible is sort of a matter of perspective. Telstra is a very large service provider, and if you were a customer of Proton Mail or Quad 9, you may have felt very differently about it. So in terms of Quad 9 and what we saw with their services, so here, this is kind of during normal state. Quad 9 is announcing a /24, so we can see that they're the origin. And then here we can see that there's a path change or a different path that's being introduced. And we see that Telstra comes into the mix, and they're also the origin, right? So they're announcing the same, they're also announcing a /24. And then here, we can see something pretty interesting, which is now there are two origins for this particular prefix. So we have Quad 9 and we have Telstra, which is really interesting because in a lot of hijacking scenarios that we see that what happens is that the responsible party, so the hijacker, whether intentional or not, will start announcing a more specific prefix. So this has happened, for instance, with Cloudflare, where they announce a /20, and then in the case of the recent hijacking with Ross Telecom accidentally, because of a route leak, started announcing a /21. So in that case, that's going to be the preferred route because that's a more specific announcement. And so that just steered a whole bunch of traffic to Ross Telecom, which got dropped. Now, in this case, Telstra is not announcing a more specific prefix. They're announcing the same prefix. So the /24 that you see here. Now, Quad 9, typically a way to mitigate the impact of a hijacking would be to then announce an even more specific prefix. Although in this case, because Quad 9 was announcing a /24, and that's often the smallest announcement that many service providers will accept, there wasn't a whole lot that could have been done here. They could have announced a couple of /25s, but that's not really a practical thing to have done to mitigate the damage here. And the damage we can see was pretty profound. So if we go up to the network view here, we can see that about 25% of the traffic that was flowing to its services here is suffering loss. So this is a good map view here. We can see the DNS server availability, and we can see it's really only about 77% globally impacted. It's not impacting everybody, but it is impacting a pretty sizable chunk of its users. And so if we go back to the network view, we can see this massive packet loss. And if we just zero in on, let's go to San Jose connected to Verizon, we can see that traffic is going from Verizon to Telstra. So Telstra in San Jose, and then traffic gets redirected to Australia, and then eventually it gets black-holed, right? So all traffic gets dropped. And so we were seeing that for a number of different locations, but in particular, Verizon. And one of the reasons for that, if we go back to the BGP route view, is that it looks like even though both Quad 9 and Telstra were announcing the same prefix, that Quad 9 was still the preferred route for most of the providers. So they were still kind of being preferred throughout this incident. But some of the routes were being preferred for Telstra, and one of them was, if we go a little bit, we can see this here, that Verizon accepted Telstra's announcement of Quad 9's prefix. So that if you're a Verizon customer, whether a commercial customer or business customers using one of their business services, you probably would have been more likely impacted by this particular incident. And we can see here that, you know, throughout this incident, there were periods in which the announcements were kind of changing and fluctuating. But then after, so we can see here, Telstra is finally revoking the illegitimate route. And then later on, we can see that everything has been restored. And now we just have Quad 9 as the origin, which is as it should be. So that was a particularly interesting one, because when we see hijackings, we typically see a more specific announcement, and that typically has a much bigger impact. And I think this is probably one of the first ones that I've seen where there's basically two origins, because two ASs are announcing the same prefix. So very interesting incident. You can see kind of the impact of that, not 100%, but you know, 25% of traffic in this particular example. So you know, I think this just really kind of speaks to, again, a topic that's come up, which is BGP security, and specifically around RPKI and adoption of that, and really the need to have better internet security hygiene, if you will.